August 21st. College football season is upon us. It's very close. Very, very soon will college football start. First games for college football will be August 26th. August 31st is another day that there'll be a couple of games. But yeah, the real games, a majority of the games I would say start September 2nd. That's the first you're going to really see some good games or games that you're going to want to actually watch. As a sports enthusiast as I am, I'm excited about a lot of these little games that most people probably won't give a rat's ass about. But I'll kind of give you a storyline why I have this game as like a game that I'm thinking about as, the thing is I've looked at the entire year, so I know, maybe some of these teams like Colorado State or a Florida Atlantic, they really maybe, not that they don't have a chance in these games, but it's more of I'm scouting them for later in the year, to get a kind of an idea of how these teams are now, to see how they react, going on later in the year. Now, when we talk about a team like Colorado State, they're one of the teams that actually I have one game that's on August 26th, and it's Colorado State versus Oregon State. I actually have Colorado State to maybe win this game. I have them on upset alert. So this is a game I feel like Colorado State can win. Oregon State's probably the better team. I wouldn't be surprised if Oregon State won, but I went out on a limb and said Colorado State. Now, Colorado State is going to have a game about 6 days later after that Oregon State game, and they will play Colorado. And that's always a fun game. That's always a good game. And I've got Colorado to win that game over Colorado State. And like I said, wouldn't be surprised if Oregon State beat Colorado State. On August 31st, Tulsa and Oklahoma State play. Definitely think Oklahoma State handles that pretty easily. Ohio State and Indiana play also that day. To me, it's a big game because it's a Big Ten game. Early in the year, Indiana may catch Ohio State off guard a little bit, being first game of the year. But I see Ohio State winning pretty handily. Washington-Rutgers on September 1st. I see Washington dismantling Rutgers. Navy, Florida Atlantic. And so this is a game that you're like, this game doesn't matter. This is a bullshit game. And it is. But I don't know. It's just fun to me because Navy is a team that's been pretty good in the past. Zach Abey, Abey is how you spell it, for Navy is their quarterback. He got a little bit of experience last year when Will Worth went down. And then, Florida Atlantic, that's where Kiffin is now. And Kiffin's brought in a lot of transfers. I saw the other day he brought in Javon Durant from West Virginia. He got John Franklin from a backup quarterback from Auburn. He brought him in. So there's two guys that he brought in. I think he did lose one of his top receiver. I think his name's like the Caleb Woods, or his last name's Woods for sure. I know that. Boston College, Northern Illinois. This is a game that really doesn't matter. I just kind of put it on here because I thought it'd probably be a pretty good matchup. Northern Illinois is one of those teams that's usually pretty good in the MAC, and Boston College is usually a pretty shitty ACC team, so I thought this might be a good game. I have Boston College winning. I also have Navy winning against Florida Atlantic, if I didn't say that. But I just kind of put it on there. There's not a whole lot of games this first week. There's a lot of big teams playing small schools. Now, there are a couple of big games that we will talk about, which are great, but, most of these first games are kind of some shit games. So on Saturday, which will be September 2nd, that'll be kind of when more of the bigger games start. Maryland, Texas is a game that two big schools. You had to put it on here. I think Texas handles them. I don't think Maryland's ready just yet. Definitely, not this year. I think playing Texas this early in the year with the schedule that you have in the ACC, with the fact that you're probably not making a BCS Bowl, I don't think Texas is a good schedule for Maryland at Texas. I think Texas wins this game. Wyoming and Iowa, I like this game. I actually Iowa lost to North Dakota State last year. Same, maybe not same head coach, but same coaching staff type, same offensive type. Craig Bowl is at Wyoming now. He was at North Dakota State, is what I'm trying to say. So I would not be surprised if Wyoming is able to go into Ames. And I don't. Are they even from fucking Ames? Hopefully I didn't say Ames, and that's where fucking Iowa State's from. But basically going to go into wherever the Hawkeyes are from. And I think Wyoming has a pretty good chance to win that game. If not, play good in that game. Wyoming's one of the better group of five. When I say group of five, I'm talking about the smaller schools. They're one of the better group of five teams. And I do have Iowa on upset alert for that game. North Carolina and Cal. Cal's in a real rebuilding year. North Carolina kind of the same way. But North Carolina's in a lot better spot than Cal is. I think North Carolina wins the game at home. Youngstown State, Pittsburgh. I put this game on here. Youngstown State has Bo Pennell. Youngstown State is a better FCS school. I don't see them winning the game, but scouting purposes to see how they match up. I'm interested to see how Pittsburgh does this year because Pittsburgh has a new quarterback, Max Brown. You have a pretty stout defense with Pittsburgh, so we'll just see. This is more of a game that I'm kind of scouting Pittsburgh to see if they have a potential to make any noise in the ACC this year. NC State, South Carolina. I think this is a huge game. I think whoever gets off to a winning start is going to really propel their season, whether it's NC State or whether it's South Carolina. I like NC State to win the game, even though it's on the road. South Carolina's always got a good defense. NC State's one of the most veteran teams in the country this year. I think I have them going about 7-4 around that. Which is pretty typical of a good NC State team, with the likes that they play with Florida State and Louisville and Clemson. It's kind of tough to top one of those three teams. Definitely in this type of a year when all three of those teams are going to be pretty good. But South Carolina, they always are pretty ready to play. That I always look at the SEC teams as bigger or as better than the other conferences. So I would not, like I said, not surprised if South Carolina wins, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say NC State wins this one. Temple and Notre Dame. I've got Notre Dame winning. I actually have Notre Dame in my top 25 to start the year, pretty high in there. It's more of one of those things that I know at the end of the year they're going to be about 9-3 or 10-4, and they're going to be able to be in the top 25. So I have the ability to go ahead and put them in there, and knowing that it's not going to be a bad look. It's not going to they're probably not a top 25 team to start the preseason with the way they played last year. But I'm going on the history of Notre Dame. I think that they're going to bounce back, and I'm kind of projecting that they will be in the top 25 before long. And I think Temple is a team that, without Matt Rule now, they're going to – this is the first game with the new head coach and stuff like that. Lost a lot of the good players that they had. I think Notre Dame definitely wins this game. Nevada, Northwestern – this is kind of like the Pittsburgh, Youngstown State game. Like, they should destroy Nevada. It's more of a scouting game that I'm looking at. I want to look at Northwestern. I'm kind of high on Northwestern this year. I think I got them going like 10-2 in the Big 12. It's kind of scouting on them. Justin Jackson, see how he does. Troy versus Boise State. This is a game that probably nobody gives a rat's ass about. If you're picking this game, you're going to say Boise State regardless. But Troy is actually a very good Sun Belt team. They're going to have 2 to 3 losses at the end of the year. This is going to be one of them. If they lose it, it's at Boise. I just want to see how Troy plays. It's actually a game I'm actually kind of excited about. Like I said, still have Boise winning the game, but I want to see how Troy fares against Boise. Troy did play Clemson last year and lost by 6 points, I think 30-24 in I think week 2 of last year's season, and Clemson became the national champs by the end of the year. So, pretty good from a team like Troy. Kentucky Southern Miss, this is one of those games where, you look on paper and you say this is a big school versus a small school, but when you start thinking about it, Kentucky and Southern Miss, those are schools that really aren't that far apart, geographically wise. And, Kentucky has never really been that great of a football school. I see Kentucky winning the game, but it's just compelling. Thinking about Southern Miss being in the kind of the SEC area. But, I don't know. It's just a kind of fun matchup. I have Kentucky winning. Appalachian State and Georgia. Appalachian State, they played Tennessee very well first game of the year last year. I think lost by about a touchdown pretty late. I see Georgia winning the game. I put them on upset alert, though, I will say, because, App State is one of the better Sun Belt schools. I have them winning the Sun Belt this year. I could see them getting destroyed by Georgia. I could see them losing a close game to Georgia. I can see it both ways, but I want to see how App State does against Georgia. Miami, Ohio versus Marshall. So Miami, Ohio is a team in the MAC that's won multiple games in a row. I think 5 or 6 in a row to end last season. They're returning a lot of starters. To me, I think I have them projected to win their side of the MAC, beating out Ohio at the top. And Marshall's a team that is some people, last year they had like a 4-8 season. They weren't that great last year. But we're going to see if they bounce back this year. Someone like Phil Steele has them bouncing back this year, being a better team. I'm not as sold on Marshall to bounce back, but that's why I put this game on here. I think it'll be a good scouting game, a good game to say, okay, is Miami, Ohio for real? Can they handle the likes of even Marshall? You know what I mean? We'll see if the streak continues for Miami, Ohio. Louisville versus Purdue. This is a no-brainer. I think Louisville, runs them into the ground. But like I said, it's kind of like the Texas-Maryland game. 2 big schools. We'll see what happens. And it's at Purdue, so that helps Purdue a little bit. But Purdue is in such a rebuild right now that I don't see them having any chance against Lamar Jackson. Vanderbilt, Middle Tennessee. Upset alert game. I'm not high on Vanderbilt this year. They're always selling you good things about Vanderbilt. They're going to be 6-6 this year. They're going to be 9-3 this year. I look at them being their typical 3-9, winning 1 or 2 SEC games. And this is one of those games that they honestly need to win. But I think Middle Tennessee State is going to win the game. It's at Middle Tennessee. Really good receiving core. Real good quarterback for Middle Tennessee. And I think it'll be a great game, And like I usually say, I won't be surprised if Vanderbilt wins, but I'm pulling for Middle Tennessee. I like Middle Tennessee. BYU and LSU are playing. Also, I think that game's in Houston. Correct me if I'm wrong, or don't quote that. LSU, I think, will win the game for sure, but BYU always gives these teams tough games at the first of the year. So it's a game to watch, keep an eye on. It's probably the 3rd best game of this day. That's how I would slate it. So it's one of the better games of the day, matchup-wise. Maybe not at the end of the day, score-wise it won't be, but matchup-wise, I like the matchup. I think LSU will win the game, though. So Michigan, Florida. So some notes here. Malik Zaire, I don't know if he's going to be the starting quarterback or not. In my preview videos, I kind of had him as the starting quarterback, or I thought he would probably for sure become the starter. Felipe Franks, though, has been showing some promise, though, I've heard. So then I picked Michigan to win this game regardless. But then a couple weeks ago, a couple of Florida players, one of their top wide receivers, I don't necessarily know a couple of the other names, or I don't for sure know, but I think a couple of starters are going to be missing. I think it's a total of 7, are going to be missing the opener against Michigan. And I picked Michigan at the first of when I started looking at the schedules and stuff like that. I don't know why I picked Michigan. It's kind of one of those things. Florida and Michigan, it's a toss-up. And I went ahead and went with them. And, as the things continue to go out, when they added Malik Zaire, with the quarterback situation becoming even more fuzzy, and then with the fact that these players are getting suspended, I even more lean to the side of Michigan. And then the thing else is, it just makes more sense to me. I see Florida losing a game here at the first of the year and then rebuilding their record later in the year. I see Michigan building their record right now at the first of the year and then losing it at the end when they have to play Ohio State, Penn State, teams like that. So it's just also it has to go with the flow of how I see the college football season going, and that's why I'm picking Michigan. And then Florida State, Alabama, if you're a kid, this is the game you're looking forward to. If you're a football fan, this is the game that you're looking forward to on that Saturday. But the one thing that I will say that I want to remind is There's never a team, no matter how good the team is, there's never a team that is as good as Alabama or as ready as Alabama as week one. And I think it's because they have more talent than anybody else. Now, this is the exception. Florida State may be the next best team at the first of the year, talent-wise. Maybe Ohio State has more talent this year. But Florida State is always a very talented team. They're always a team that you don't want to play at the first of the year. But it just with the history of how things have gone, I've seen Alabama play a good Virginia Tech team, a good West Virginia team. I've seen them play multiple games at the first of the year and think that the team that they're playing, this could be a close game, and they slaughter them. And so I think that it's going to be kind of the same scenario for Alabama this first game of the year. I think they're going to have a lot of wanting to get back for the loss last year. Jalen Hurns is back. A lot of times with Alabama, these players, they play and then they go. So there's not a lot of emotion to wanting to win. But I think with the fact that Jalen Hurns and, a couple other guys that were on the team last year that are coming back, I think there's going to be a bit of a fire under these Alabama players this year. I got them going back to the playoff for sure. And I got them winning this game for sure over Florida State. And then Sunday, we have a couple of good games on Sunday, and then one on Monday. It's an all right one on Monday. Texas A&M and UCLA is on Sunday. They played last year in College Station, and A&M was all over them from the start. I see it being a little bit of a role reversal this year. I see UCLA jumping out on top of them this year. I see Rosen having a good game. So I think UCLA will win this year. It's kind of like a home and home. Like 1 year they play there, 1 year they play there. So I think, A&M won it last year. I think UCLA will handle it this year. West Virginia and Virginia Tech, I have a lot to say about this game. Not as I have a lot to say about it as this is a great matchup or, I'm really excited about this game. But something that you'll notice with the top 25 is, to me, West Virginia has no business being in the top 25. They lost multiple starters. They need to answer some questions for me before I can put them in my top 25. Virginia Tech is a team that I do have in my top 25. I like what they did last year. I think they will build off last year and continue this year. Not saying West Virginia won't build off last year and continue this year, but I think with the fact that just a new quarterback, I don't feel like they have that much experience on defense. I think they're not considered to be a ranked team. But watch this. Something that you'll notice throughout this year and something that you'll notice just throughout now, teams will become ranked when they have a big matchup. It's and it's one of those things when you're watching a game and you see, Alabama's ranked 1 and Florida State's ranked 3. Man, I'm excited about this game. Or later in the year when you've got, I was watching a classic game the other day. It was Georgia versus Alabama. I think Alabama was 8 and Georgia was 5. And this was back in 2009. And this is right when Alabama was coming to be number 1, and this is when Georgia was had Stafford still, and Georgia was honestly probably considered better than Alabama at the time. And I just remember this is probably week 4 or week 5 in the season, and we're talking about the 8th ranked team versus the 5th ranked team, and it's you to the point where you don't really know, you know what I mean? It don't really matter. And so my top 25 that I've made is basically how I feel about each team, power wise, their roster, how deep I think they can go because the talent that they have. I didn't necessarily do my top 25 based off, how they did last year or, this or that. But what I was trying to get to is you'll see, like I said, Virginia Tech and West Virginia are ranked. It gives you a little bit more enticing feel to the game when both teams are ranked. I that's how I feel. When I get on, I turn a game on and there's 2 ranked teams. I'd much rather watch it. There's a lot more on the line, even though those are just numbers. Those numbers don't mean anything other than gives you an idea of who's who or where's what. But to me, those numbers at the end or at the first of it are just bullshit. West Virginia, because the thing is basically too, okay, when West Virginia loses this game against Virginia Tech, then we can take them out the top 25. You know what I mean? But my thing is I think that there should be a different team there instead of Virginia Tech. Stop creating these matchups these things to make these things look like matchups when they're really not. That's basically what I'm getting at. Virginia Tech, though, I have Virginia Tech winning. I think they're a better team. The only issue that they really have is their quarterback position, having to replace their quarterback, something they didn't really think they were going to have to do. I didn't think Gerard Evans was going to leave. He had a really good year last year. He could have been poised for a really good year this year, but he left. And then Monday, just like last year, we had the Mississippi State-Florida State game. This year we'll have Tennessee versus Georgia Tech. I really give Georgia Tech no chance. They're going to be running that option offense, which I love. But I really give them no chance against a solid, Tennessee team that Tennessee has lots of like good like recruits. So I see Tennessee just overpowering Georgia Tech. Tennessee's a team that they're putting in the top 25 that I really don't think is a top 25 team. And it's one of those things like I don't really have to fret about it because I know Tennessee is going to play their way out. They do it every year. So let's talk about top 25 a little bit. When you talk about top 25, everybody knows Alabama's number one. Alabama's number one. Even though they lost last year, the fact that Clemson lost the amount of players that they lost, you got to put them down a little bit. You got to use your brain a little bit. You can't just go off of records of last year. Alabama's the best team. In my top 25, I have Florida State as the second best team. And that can be very interchangeable with Ohio State. In the AP top 25, they have Ohio State second. I have Ohio State third in mine, so vice versa. They've got USC at 4. I've got USC at 5. I've got Oklahoma at 4. They've got Oklahoma at 7. And then you go Clemson, Penn State. I've got Clemson at 6, Penn State at 7. They've got Clemson at 5. They've got Penn State at 6. And then they got Oklahoma at 7, which then at 8, they have Washington. I have Auburn at 8. They have Auburn at 12. I have Washington at 9. LSU at 10. They have LSU at 13. I have Florida at 11. They've got Florida at 17. I got Wisconsin at 12. They've got Wisconsin all the way up at 9. That's one of those things that they know Wisconsin's probably going to go undefeated for most of the first of the year, so they can go ahead and put them that high. I don't think that they're better than a couple of teams that I put them below. And, they're going to move up because they're going to win games. They've got an easy-ass schedule. They've got Ohio State at 10. I've got them at 18. I just feel like Ohio State's going to lose a game, or Oklahoma State's going to lose a game early in the year at some point. So, I'm not really too high on them. They always figure out a way to beat themselves. Michigan, they've got Michigan at 11. I've got Michigan down at 19. The fact that Michigan doesn't have a lot of starters returning, I'm not as high on. They're going to have to really build their team at the first of the year to define their team at the end of it. As you go down the list, Stanford at 13. They've got Stanford at 14. I've got Stanford at 13. They've got Louisville at 16. I've got Louisville at 14. Miami, I've got Miami at 15. They've got Miami at 18. They've got Georgia at 15. I've got Georgia at 16. They have South Florida at 19. I have South Florida at 24. My thing is I know South Florida is going to continue to bolster up the charts throughout the year, so why not just put them towards the bottom? They're going to go up. They're not as good as these other teams talent-wise, but they're going to be up. They're going to move up ahead of these teams because they don't play the same schedule. It's not as tough. They've got Kansas State at 20. I've got Kansas State at 21. Virginia Tech at 22. Or at 21, I've got Virginia Tech at 22. Texas at 23, I've got Texas at 23. I've got Oregon at 25. They have Tennessee at 25. I guess those are kind of our wild card teams. Is that theirs is Tennessee, mine's Oregon. I think Oregon's going to have a good year. And then I have TCU at 20. They have West Virginia at 22. And then our only other one that's different, I think, is I have TCU in at 20. I think TCU is going to have a pretty good year. They're returning tons of starters on offense and defense. I have TCU in, and then I also have Notre Dame in at 16. Like I said at the first of it, I have Notre Dame as high as I do because I know that they're going to be able to build throughout the year. I know that they're going to be in the top 25 eventually. So it's almost like making yourself look good, almost like they're making themselves look good by putting Wisconsin at 9, even though Wisconsin is not the 9th best team by far. Now I'm trying to look here. Now they have 3 teams in that I have out. and I'm trying to figure out those three teams. I know I had the three teams that I have in that they don't have in are TCU, Notre Dame, and Oregon. The three teams that they don't have in that I have in are or the three teams that they have in that I don't have in are West Virginia, Washington State, and Tennessee. So Washington State's the other one. Washington State's close, but I don't have them in yet. The way that they lost those first couple games last year to Eastern Washington and Boise State, to me, they have not proved to be a top tier team in my eyes. And when the way they played Washington last year, they're not a top tier team in my eyes. Luke Falk is a great NFL prospect quarterback, but he is not necessarily like winner, we need this shit in the fourth quarter. Let me fucking pony up and get this shit done. He is not that guy at all. I've watched him too many times crumble last year against teams that weren't, top tier teams. We're talking Boise State and we're talking Eastern Washington, FCS school. So that's what I got to say about that. Just want to do a little preview on week one. I'll come back with a week two preview. Maybe we'll talk post week one. After this week two, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about NFL week one. We'll talk about some fantasy stuff. Check out my website, Panarin Sports. I got the link I'll probably put the link in my description or whatever you do, whatever these YouTubers do. And then my link is on my page. Go check my website out. It doesn't do nothing but help me. Thank you.